when my kids were born, the next day I went and took out investments. Not a lot of money. I think back then, I don't know what it was, 1,000 Rand a month. I think I'm now putting 2,000 Rand a month away, and every now and then if I have some extra money, I'll put in a lump sum for them. I do it for two reasons. One, by the time they get to the age of 30, they've been invested in the market for 30 years.
Very few people have the heart to contribute and make a difference in other people's lives without expecting a return. Our next guest reflects the values of a focused and driven self-made individual with a strong appetite for risk. It was his thinking that led him to success. He began his professional career as an optical clerk and is now the director and owner of a multinational technology firm. He has taught me that wealth is not out of reach. Anyone can be wealthy with a bit of time and a lot of discipline. Please join me in welcoming Siegfried Lokotsch. Sig, thank you very much for having us, Yanesh. We really appreciate having you on. I remember the first time that I came here and I met you. The first perception, which is a misconception that I now know because I know you personally. I saw you drive a Lamborghini to work every day, and I was like, God, who's this person? So here's an introduction. Can you tell us who you are?
But you didn't see me in the Lambo when you first came.
True.
I knew. You found out from
rumors.
someone. Yes. I don't think you saw the car.
Yes, actually saw the car 2 months later.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So who are you? Tell us about yourself, where you started.
Well, thanks guys for having me. First of all, what's with the clap, Goodwill?
It's to sync the audio and the visual.
To sync the audio, right. I thought maybe it's just like your Goodwill's trademark for his podcast or something.
To invite the spirit.
Or just to wake me up. Look, I was born in Pretoria, up in Joburg area. I went to primary school there. My father's originally comes from the Eastern Cape. He was born and bred in Port Elizabeth. And there's a school just outside Port Elizabeth the private school called Woodridge, which is in the country. And we always used to come down on an annual holiday because obviously my grandmother lived down here and his brothers and his family. And obviously being from the coast, we'd have our December holiday and come for vacation. And whenever we used to drive across the Franciscans Bridge on our way to Jeffreys Bay or St. Francis or Sagefield or where we were going, even one holiday we went down to Hermanus, always used to say to my mother that he wants to send me to that school. And my mother went to boarding school when she was in high school, and they felt it would be a good thing for me to go. So in 1989, I went to high school down here in the Eastern Cape.
That's when I was born, 99.
Yeah, 1989. And essentially, we obviously I went there, and then my siblings, I've got a sister, a brother, and another sister. They also ended up going to the school, and kind of from there, when I left school, I got into Stellenbosch, but I decided I was going to stay here. In university, I went to the local university. Back then, it was the University of Port Elizabeth. It's now called NNMMU, Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. Yeah. I started studying a BCom law. I thought maybe I wanted to go into the legal side of things, but I realized after a year that lawyers sell time and they capped. There's only 24 hours in a day, and I quickly decided, and I didn't want to sit in that legal system. So I then changed route. And the university had this course called the BCom Rationum, which essentially is where you do two majors. So you can major in accounting, and you can major either in law, economics, business economics, or computer science. And then, so normal BCom is 3 years. This was 4 years, and after that you can go and do honors. So for example, if you did a BCom law, you can then go do an LB. If you decide you don't want to do the accounting route. But I felt I needed to do the accounting route to become a chartered accountant, because I quickly caught on to the fact that from a business perspective, if you want to be in your own business, which I wanted to be because my father had his own business, so from a young age I had a little bit of entrepreneurial kind of feel to it, because I was brought up in that element, or I'm trying to think of the word. And I felt that for me to be able to run my own business, CA would make the most sense. And that's why I decided to do that. It wasn't easy. I'm not going to lie to you. Managed to get through that. Then went and did my articles here at Deloitte. locally. Started that in 2000. In 2002, September 2002, I managed to get a secondment overseas to Deloitte in Milwaukee, because Arthur Andersen was a big auditing firm, one of the big four. That had collapsed because there was a corporate scandal. So the US equivalent of Steinhoff, WorldCom and Enron, they were basically
conquering the books.
Yeah, conquering the books and fake, reporting inflated assets. And Arthur Andersen were the auditors and signed off on their books. So when WorldCom and Enron collapsed, which back then was the biggest corporate scandal in history, Arthur Andersen collapsed with them. Deloitte was absorbing a lot of their clients, and they needed staff. There was immediately this demand. I saw the gap quickly for me to go overseas during articles, which is unknown. Deloitte's always had this thing called JIT, where you could go work overseas after articles, but I managed to do it 7 months before the end of my articles, me and 2 other guys. So I jumped onto that, went and worked in the US. I lived in Milwaukee downtown. It was pretty awesome. They put us up in a residence inn as a Marriott, so you get an apartment. Me and my mate that I was doing articles with and that studied, we had a really nice apartment. And I really had 2 clients. The one client was a big, they make big plant, like similar to JCB. It's called CNH. It's New Holland and Case. So Case makes big front-end loaders, the earth-moving equipment, and New Holland makes big combine harvesters. They're big in the agricultural sector. And what I was actually working on was, so what they used to do is they have these things they call securitizations, where they put, when they make the equipment, that you're now going to sell it to the dealer. But for example, there's $200 or $300 million worth of stuff that needs to go to a dealer or a couple of dealers, and they don't have the money to fund it. So what they would then do is they would basically, because it's plant and there's asset to it, they would group it all together into like $250 million worth of this equipment, brand new equipment, and then they would go to the market and say, okay, we would securitize against that, and we would go to Goodwill and to Yanesh and say, look, you guys are looking for a return on, you've got some excess cash. Tell you what, lend us the money, we'll pay you 4 or 5%, which is quite high in US terms. We'll securitize over the next 5 or 6 years. They would then use that money for the dealership to be able to buy the plant. They would then take the plant and sell it, and that's how they would fund.
That's quite clever, eh?
Well, a lot of them did it, like GM did. A lot of them, and GE, they had these securitized kind of, because you had GE finance,
Yeah.
You got, for example, you got BMW. I mean, you do your Merck financing through their agility. So they all do it. They all have this finance on because they make hard assets that you can finance.
But I didn't know that they were taking money from.
Yes,
private investors.
So what actually happened was quite interesting. So I worked on these things which I had no experience with, and they would actually list these on the New York Stock Exchange.
Oh, really?
They'd wrap them all up, So you'd have so you'd have 5 or 6 of these deals ranging from $150 million to $280 million, and wrap it up and go securitize it and list it. So it's actually a listed thing. So you can buy,
trade it.
Yeah, so you can buy and sell it. So if you want to get out, there's depending on what interest rates are doing, you could go and liquidate your thing, and then obviously it's securitized for 6 or 7 years. So you're going to get 5% depending on what for the next. So if you're a pension fund, so it was a good way for pension funds that are looking for relatively low amount of risk and a stable income. They would then come in and do this, because it's a good way for them to get a better yield as opposed to, for example, buying a government bond where you're getting 2% or 1.5%.
So at this point, you hadn't begun trading. You were still at
Deloitte. No. I started trading when in articles. I used to sit in the back there in my first year. I started trading. So I'll tell you the story about that. It's very interesting. So what I did was, I needed money to start trading. Okay, I was always kind of interested in the stock market and investments. So I knew I needed to invest from a young age. So even when I started when I was 14, and again, it's something I picked up from my father, because my father had a portfolio, and that although he didn't sit with me and explain it to me like I do now with my kids from a young age, try and get them to understand it, I would pick up bits and pieces, because when I was in high school, I'd come home for holidays, and what used to happen is I'd used to go with him to work in the morning, because he used to his business was basically transporting cars. He was in the car industry. So in South Africa, what they used to do is that if you did close by delivery, so his office was in Roslyn, as you know, that's a lot of our customers.
Yeah.
So he had a contract with Nissan to take their cars to all the dealerships basically in Gauteng area. Okay, so they wouldn't put them on trucks; they'd actually drive them to the dealerships.
Okay.
So he had a whole lot of drivers that would drive the cars from the factory, from the Nissan factory, to the dealers, do the deliveries, and Nissan used to pay him to do that. So I kind of learned bits and pieces from him. So coming back to the trading side of things, so when I started at Deloitte, my starting salary was 3,200 Rand a month as an article clerk. And in the old days, you used to pay to do articles. You would actually go to an auditing firm and you would pay them because they're training you up. You used to pay them to be able to do articles. And then what happened was I needed capital. So obviously my father had paid for my university and I had a car and I had all the stuff, but I somehow went to him and convinced him to sign surety for me. ABSA had this thing going where you could have student loan. It was quite a good deal. It was 70,000 Rand student loan at, like let's just say prime was 10% of what interest rate. They would give it to you prime -2. You know, you only have to pay it back after you study, but you need someone to sign surety. I don't know what bullshit story I told him. I think I told him something like I wanted to,
You needed to go study more.
No. I told him some bullshit about my car or something. I can't remember. But somehow I managed to get him to sign surety for it. So I got the 70K and I started trading. Knew nothing what I was doing. Okay. And it was kind of the start of what they call these leveraged kind of products. So obviously 70,000 Rand doesn't buy you a hell of a lot of, if you go and buy an Anglo share that's trading at 200 Rand or 300 Rand, you can't buy a lot of Anglo shares for that, you understand? So what I needed to do was take the 70,000 Rand and gear it up. So what effectively that means is you want to be able to, with the 70, try and trade 500,000 Rands, which so means that you potentially could lose, if I've got 70, I'm trading 500,000 Rand, I could lose 500,000, which I didn't have. Okay, so I started trading these things called warrants, which is what they had, and I started learning about these things. So effectively, they would give you gearing of about, depending on what warrant you were trading, anything from 4 to 8 times.
Wow, that's a lot, eh?
Yeah, and it was round about just coming toward the end of the kind of .com boom. All right, and one of the shares that I traded was Data, which was a darling back in the day. And I remember didn't know really what I was doing, opened up an account with a company called Lecha Securities, started speaking to Costa, and me and him became very good. He was the broker, and did really well. I took the 70,000 Rand and I went from 70,000 Rand to, like, I don't know, 250 or 300,000 Rand. So,
how old were you at the time?
Well, I just finished university, so I was born in 75, 25, and I was 24, 25. And obviously I was bouncing around there, you know, as a first year article clerk, kind of, you know, if you make 5, 10, 12,000 Rand a month out of a trade, you know, and I did it quickly.
Tripling your salary.
Well, I took it from 70,000 to call it 300,000 in a couple of months. But then we had the big crash. So my 300,000 went from 300,000 to naught. So now I'm down 70 because I owe the bank 70. Can't go back to my old man to get more money. So Richard Drinkwater, which you know, who does our provident funds and everything else, he studied with me and did articles. So I said to him, Rad, got this deal for you. I'm trading, I'm making all this money, you know, but we need some capital. So I convinced him to go to his mother, get her to sign surety. Okay. Get another 70K. All right, give me the 70, and I said, give me the 70, we'll trade it together, you can learn about it, and we'll split the profits. And he fell for it, took line and sinker. And he also then started getting it. So at the back there, I was just in the corner under the aircon, and I used to do my job quite quickly, but my main focus was on trading. I didn't care about my day-to-day, you know, work. What I did do though is when I used to go to clients, I try to learn about the businesses. That was what I would try to learn, not about the auditing. I didn't care about the auditing. I wanted to know. So every business I used to walk into, I'd say, okay, try and learn as much about the business. If I was the owner of the business, what would I change? Try to take good, bad, everything. And that helped me in my trading kind of thing. because you got to learn to read financials, you got to understand about companies, you got to understand more than just what the numbers are, you got to understand the sentiment, you got to understand all these things. I learned a lot of things out of it. Taught me a hell of a lot. Nothing teaches you more about these type of things like than actually putting it on the table, taking it out and putting it on the table. Because unless you got skin in the game, you're not going to learn.
Yeah.
And me and Richard did very well out of that. We started trading, and he started doing a lot of the technical analysis because he's quite analytical. So if you're on the graphs and stuff, and he started doing that. So he used to do the technical part of it. I used to do more the fundamentals and kind of the gut feel. And between us, we would then. The thing for me good was I was never scared because I kind of in my mind looked like I'd become a qualified chartered accountant. I'd be able to earn a good living. And in the big scheme of things, 70 or 140,000 rand, really. Back then was a lot of money, but for me, even if I'd lost all of it, the lessons that I learned from that were invaluable.
Yeah.
Can't get that in any university. And we did well, and we started trading, and we got to a point where we were making, when I was in third year, just before I went overseas, I remember I bought myself a new, that Peugeot, called it a Piguet, the GTR.
Yeah.
Remember that 206? I had that. I had a Merc compressor.
SLK.
Yeah, I was not a SLK, the compressor, the one before that. Okay. I mean, I was making, when I left to go to the US, I think my salary was 15 or 16,000 rand a month. Okay, and I was tripling it to quadrupling it on trading, if you take it on a monthly basis. So when I went to the US, I stopped trading because the US is a much bigger market because I was trading the South African market and I had certain things that I would look at. So, and obviously because even though I was still following the markets, you need to follow the US markets, I didn't, and I trading in dollars. So, you got to add it, multiply it back then by 7 or 8 or 9, whatever the exchange rate was. But I still followed it. So, and what I also did is, what I used to do is 50% of what I made on trading, I'd invest long term. The other 50% I would spend on cars, women, or whatever I felt like go overseas, go watch rugby, do whatever. Because I felt that if you make a good decision, you need to pay yourself for it, you need to enjoy it. So that's kind of how the trading happened, and I worked in the US for 8 or 9 months. I didn't want to be working auditing. I wanted to kind of get involved in some form of business, and while I was in the US, I had a call from Derek Middleton, who was the partner I used to work for at Deloitte, and he had just got Jendamark as a client. And he felt they were a good business, but they needed, so there were the 3 founding partners, which was Gary, Quinton, and Dwayne, good engineers, but they needed someone that had a strong personality, could stand up to them and put in the financial kind of controls, and more, kind of run the business side of it. Because when they did well, they wouldn't cater for they didn't have the right business acumen, if that makes any sense. So when they were doing well, but when things weren't going well, it wasn't going well, and they didn't make provision for that. It didn't take some of that money, put it aside. So I came back, had the interview with them, and started working here. And that was kind of how it went. And obviously coming back to South Africa, I started trading again. And then I got into a whole lot of other things that I was doing trading-wise, which by that time, a lot of the stuff had, the gearing part of things started having single stock futures. So I was one of the first few guys that did these single stock future kind of things, which is even more gearing, gave you like 10 to 12 times gearing.
Was that with Auto Trader?
No, that was, I started with BOE, and then BOE got bought by Nedbank. And I actually started trading with a guy by the name of Garth McKenzie, who's actually well known in the market. And then Andrew joined him later on, and Garth was kind of the guys that started these single stock futures. BOE, and then he went to Nedbank, and then because Nedbank bought BOE, and then they went somewhere else, and he actually started his own called Traders Corner like thing. He actually lives in the UK now. Yeah, and I started trading. And
why did you not do trading full time? Why did you get into JMK? You could have just traded full time.
No, because I wanted to be in business, and I felt I could do elements of it. I could do both. So why not hedge yourself? You don't always make money in trading. Good one. I lost a lot of money, and not all my trades were good. At bad trades, at good trades. Told you the story about the Porsches, right?
No.
About bad I told you the story. 2 trades. Did a trade. Basically, the same amount as buying a Porsche 911. Like you go to the dealership, you buy the Porsche, You get in the car, you drive it into the harbour.
I remember that.
Then you go back to the dealership, you buy another one, and drive it into the harbour. So how long you think that'll take you? Like half an hour, 45 minutes? Gone.
That just blows my mind. Two
Porsches, 45 minutes, gone. Brand new. Drove it from the dealership to the harbour and just
off the edge.
Off the edge, get out the car. Let it go.
Get a new one.
Call an Uber, didn't have Uber, a cab, call your mate to come fetch you. Back to Porsche, get another one, drive it off the edge.
In an hour.
Oh, probably.
That's 2 million, clean.
No, more.
More.
911.
More, much more.
So I've got.
I can Google it for you.
Yeah.
Should we check it?
Yeah, please.
911 Turbo was like 4 or 5 million.
Yeah. Back then, maybe it was 2 million.
A bit less now, back then. So I've got one question, but if you could answer it in 3 different ways. So it's all about advice. So you've given me some amazing advice, which I think many people would benefit from. But if you could give financial advice, and if I could break it up into 3 buckets. One is a small business. Lots of people are trying to start their own business, entrepreneurs. What advice would you give them? What advice would you give a person starting out work? The same advice you gave me when I started. And what advice would you give from a trading perspective? If you wanted to trade and become a trader, those are the kind of 3 areas that.
So I think let's start with the standard advice which applies across the board. I think people are looking for, and more so with your generation, the millennials, instant gratification, whatever that might be, and even more so with money. Okay, so for me, one thing that I managed to understand at a very young age was that I needed to be invested and I needed to be in stock market. So it's really simple. What you need to do, and same advice I gave you when you came and sat with me, okay, and the same conversation I had with him 17, 18 years ago, is take as much as you can. So what I always did is I pay my investments before I do everything, and I've never got money, because it's okay. So you take as much as you can, whatever that might be, whether you earn 100 Rand a month, 1,000 Rand a month, $1,000,000 Rand a month, okay, and you invest as much of that as you can in the stock market. Okay, and these days with ETFs and things that they've got, it's really simple. I mean, back in my day, they didn't have that. I'd have to go and pick a unit trust and go and read up. We didn't have internet, it wasn't like available like it is now. We can go and Google something and find it. So it's really easy. So you take whatever amount you can afford, as much as you can, and you start investing. Okay, you invest monthly, and you take a 20-year view. Put it away, don't look at it.
And I think that's key, because that doesn't answer the instant gratification thing. It's a discipline. You
put it away, don't look at it. Absolutely, yeah. Okay, and for me, exactly what you're saying. So you need 2 things to be able to create wealth. You need time and you need discipline. So like I've also told both of you, when my kids were born, the next day I took out investments for them. Not a lot of money. I think back then, I don't know what it was, 1,000 Rand a month. I think I'm now putting 2,000 Rand a month away, and every now and then if I have some extra money, I'll put in a lump sum for them. I do it for 2 reasons. One, by the time they get to the age of 30, they've been invested in the market for 30 years, where most people are only starting at that age. All right? So they've already got a 30-year head start. The other reason, more importantly, is to teach them about it. So what I do with my kids now, even though my youngest the twins are 9 and Daniel's 11, so I've been ready. So I'll say to them, right, here's your investments, come, let's sit. This is what you've got. And Daniel's starting to understand a bit better. Look what it was 6 months ago, look what it was here, look at what it is now. Okay, this is what we're doing. So I'll tell them, like for their birthday, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 5,000 Rand, you can buy whatever you want. But if you decide to invest the 5,000 Rand, then I'll put an extra 5 in, so you get 10. What do you want to do? Twins don't quite understand it.
Yeah.
Daniel's starting to understand it.
Those are important emotional decisions. Typically, you just take the 5,000 and buy something, right? But if you can have that emotional strength to understand the longer term.
So what they're now starting to understand is that they started the year on 100 and they ended the year on 120. Why is that? They didn't have to do anything for that. Okay? So to come back to your story, your thing with the small business. So let's finish the investment. So those are the 4 kind of principles for me: is invest monthly, take a long-term view, and do you have the discipline to stay the course? Yeah. And the discipline in terms of, okay, when I've built up enough money now, am I going to buy my house or pay off my debt or buy a car or go on a holiday? Okay, make the sacrifice, because in the long term it's worth it. I promise you it's worth it.
Can you also make on that? You told me about the difference between buying a house and renting one. And
yes, so it's very simple. So if me and you both earn exactly the same, so let's say both of us can afford a 2 million rand house, all right? You decide that. So if you had to buy that 2 million rand house at the current kind of interest rates, it's probably going to cost you 20,000 rand a month if you bonded it at 70% and insurance and all the other on costs. I'm just work on 20,000 rand. But I can tell you now that you buy your house, you're paying 20,000 rand. I can rent the same. So let's say we're buying a complex, it's the exact same house right next to each other. Okay, we work in the same business, we earn the same. I could rent that same house, brand new house. So I'm renting a brand new house, you're buying a brand new house. I can rent that same house probably for 10,000 rand a month. Okay, so now you're putting 20,000 rand a month into it. You're paying interest and stuff, and you've got all the additional costs like if the rates go up, maintenance, all the other stuff. I'm paying 10,000 rand a month. So I say to my landlord, I'm clear, and in this example, for the sake of the hypothesis, I'm going to stay here for 20 years. I'll lock you into a 20-year lease. So then I'll get it for 8,000 rand a month. Because he's happy, I'm going to pay him, right? Okay, there'll be an escalation in it, going up at 6 or 7%. But what I do is I negotiate, that's all in. No maintenance, no rates and taxes. Obviously, I've got to pay electricity, I've got to pay the water. Everyone has to pay that. But I don't have the other headache, okay? So both of us are living in a brand new house. You're paying 20,000 rand a month, I'm paying 8,000. Now, I've got an extra 12,000 rand a month that I can invest. So what do? I take that money and I just go and buy the Satrix 40 ETF, which is the JSE top 40 shares, okay? And I invest that 12,000 rand on a monthly basis for 20 years. At the end of the 20-year period, now remember you paid 2 million rand for your house. At the end of the 20-year period, let's assume that house has gone up in value by inflation, which is 6 or 7% a year. And let's assume, I don't know what the numbers are, I don't have
double.
Let's just say it's worth 5-6 million. Let's say it's worth 8 million. Okay, so you've now paid your house off because you were taking a bond over 20 years. You've got a house worth 8 million, right? I've lived in the same house. I might not have owned it, okay, but I've had the same experience, okay? And I've invested 12,000 rand a month, probably more because my salary would have gone up, okay? So I would have added on to that. I can tell you now, I would probably have 30 or 40 million rand. Depending on what funds I'd put it in. Even if I say I had 20 million rand. So you've got 8, I've got 20. What do you have? You have a house. So I can go and now buy the house for 8 and still have 12 left. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
But you can only see the difference once you get to that stage.
Over time, yeah.
Over time. So coming back to what I was saying to you, so those are the principles for me that you need to stick to, and you have to stick to those principles. The only good thing about this house example, though, that I will tell you is that you can lend the bank's money. So if you didn't have the 2 million rand, you could lend 70% of the bank's money, which is call it 1.4 million rand, and you're only putting in 600,000. So you're actually growing your asset from 2 to 8 with 600,000 because you use 1.4 million. So that is a good thing. So the gearing example I was giving you. So if I could go to the bank and say, listen, give me 1.4 million rand and I'll put it into the stock market. Now, if I put that 1.4 in as a lump sum to start off with, then I'd have 50 or 60 million. Do you understand? But they'll never do that. So that's the only positive to the example I've just given you now. That, you know, so everybody gets taught, you get taught, now pay your house off, you mustn't have debt. So if you can manage debt and you understand how to have long-term debt that gives you income generating assets, it's a very good way to grow your asset base. But the problem that people have is they don't understand that, so they'll go and buy food and stuff with a credit card. I mean, when I walk in there and they always ask me about the credit card, they say to me, budget or straight. I'm like, you should be shot for actually offering the budget. No, absolutely. Because you're now paying 25% interest or whatever that is for that food purchase.
Yeah.
So if you don't understand that, goodwill, which most people don't, they get themselves into shit.
And the financial institutes take advantage
Absolutely.
of that, right?
So forget the Credit Act and forget all of that kind of stuff. So if you understand it, doesn't make sense to use that to buy something, a consumable. To go and buy a Coke, which I'm going to pee out tomorrow. Most expensive pee you've ever had.
Yeah.
I can tell you now.
25%
And it wasn't even fun.
Yeah.
You know, one of those when you're in the car, in the plane, and you're lucky, you're just like, one of those. It's not even one of those. It actually feels like you actually like you might need surgery because when you actually, if I had to actually explain it to you. Makes sense? So coming back to my example, I'm digressing here. So that's on the financial. With regard to your question with the business?
Maybe use Jendamark as an example. Where were we and what are
the
the key
first
things
thing I
you
would
push?
say to any business owner is you need two things to be successful in your business. You need a good kind of operator / MD, and you need a good financial person. So the first thing I would say is go and get that person and pay for them. Get a young CEO, get him in, give him equity, and pay him. Okay? That's point one. Point two, don't be scared to take risk.
Yeah.
Don't be scared. And don't try and do everything. Because that's typically what a small business does. And as it grows, so the guy started with one, which was himself. Now he's got 10 and 12 people, then 15. He still wants to do everything. I mean, you were sitting on the plane with quite a biggish business. The guy was he's the owner of the business. He's still writing out the checks and checking everything.
Yeah.
So that's what I would advise from that perspective, because focus on the stuff that you're good at and hire other people in the business, and don't be scared to bring them in and make them part of your business, because you've got to be in a position where the business can operate on its own without you being there.
Yeah.
And no business started big. There's no business in this world that just was born big.
Yeah.
Every business started small, and you go through these kind of learning curves. And if the person's not right, then you change it.
Yeah.
You're not always going to hire the right people. I've had some real hurlers in my time.
So I think that's also one of the things that I've learned from you is how to manage people. And it's sometimes not easy, because you have to separate the emotion out of it and do the right thing for the business. So maybe your advice on how do you manage staff, just from a principal perspective? Like one of the things you always say is make sure you've got a number two. Like
number two and a number three.
For example.
Well, first of all, trust. So I trust you until I don't trust you. Okay? So give them the benefit of the doubt. Absolutely. Until you fuck it up, goodwill. All right? Why must I not trust you?
Yeah.
That's the first thing. People struggle with that. Struggle with that.
Yeah.
I can absolutely tell you now that if Chantal wanted to now, she can go make a transfer and pay 50 million rand out the bank account. If she had Jackie or someone else with her. Don't even lose an inkling of sleep about that. Because if they're going to steal from you, they're going to find a way to do it anyway. So trust, that's the first thing. The second thing is, do what's best for the collective. So it's not an easy job dealing with people. Yeah. Okay, and you get emotionally but if you have 500 people in your business and you have to do something with regard to a certain staff member which doesn't feel good, okay, you have to say to yourself, what is best for the company? And whatever that is, that's what I always do as my guide. I'll try and be as fair as I can, give the person the benefit of the doubt, but do what's best for the company as a collective. Yeah. Even though it might end up being not an easy decision.
Yeah. So do what's best for the other 499.
Yes, correct.
Because you have to make a decision for them.
Correct.
Not the one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What is the best advice I gave you, Yanni?
Lots of good advice. On the golf course or?
I've given you advice on golf course. I think I could be a
to
good
quit.
Caddy. No, I think I could be a good caddy, but I don't know about
a swing. No, for the best advice for sure, which is probably going to go up a lot of people's noses, is that MBA is a waste of time.
What did I call it?
Master what?
Master of bugger all.
Master of bugger all. And it was 100% right. At the time I was like, it was pure trust, because I didn't understand it. I think I started for 6 months and decided to stop based off your advice.
No, I told you you'd get a better MBA just yet.
Yeah, exactly. Because what you said was, an MBA will never teach you what you will learn here. Rather focus on learning here in a business, in a real business, than the theories of an MBA. And I think you said to me that if you want to go into corporate and climb the ladder, an MBA makes sense. Absolutely. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, learn by making mistakes.
Yeah.
And it was 100% right.
That's a good point. So for me, the biggest lessons I've learned is out of my failures, not my successes.
Yeah.
And there's been lots of them. Trust me, good one. Lots. On a daily basis, you have them.
Yeah.
But it's about turning them into positives, not negatives.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people forget that there's no blueprint for how we do this. It's kind of...
You've got to go with your gut. Yeah. You've got to go with how you feel. That's what trading taught me. Yeah. You can look at the numbers until you're blue in the face. Trust me now, you can go and ask any economist or any of the analysts, look at their report 6 months before the credit crisis. Now, buy what's the name? What's the company that went tits up? Was it Best Turns? Which was the one that went?
Best Turns, yeah. Long time ago.
Yeah, in 2008, the credit crisis, the blue. No, buy them. They buy. Then 6 months later, they go, world's in complete. No, you must get out of it. Where were you 6 months ago?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying to you? That's all hind looking.
Yeah. Speaking of the stock market, let's talk about Tesla.
That's the one that I actually want to ask about. So I don't know a lot about trading and market share and market value, but I have some numbers here. The comparison between Tesla, General Motors, and Ford, and this is 2019. So the enterprise value of Tesla was at $629 billion US dollars. General Motors 165 billion. Ford 164 billion. But the revenue of these companies, Tesla was 31 billion, General Motors 122 billion, and Ford Motor 127 billion. I just don't understand why Tesla is valued that high and what these numbers even mean if the revenue annually is that low compared to General Motors and Ford.
So the markets value Tesla as a tech company. So what they're saying is we're buying the future of what they're gonna, the potential, and it's discounting blue skies for Tesla. So Ford and GM are seen as archaic companies out of the Stone Age. Doesn't matter that they're actually making good profits now. They're making really good profits. And although they're investing money in the EVs and that, so forget about the 2019 numbers. You should be talking about 2022 because so Tesla's market cap, we chatted about it before and I looked at it on my phone, it's 800 billion. So the question is Tesla, and I've had this debate with you guys, is it a tech company? Is it a car company? So my original, I didn't like Tesla because I felt it was a car company and I didn't know if he would be able to execute, but like I told you guys, the quarterly results last quarter were really good and I'm starting to change my view on the actual company, even though he's only hoping to get to 1.5 million vehicles next year, a year that he's producing. That's nothing. The global market that I think is 100 million, 100 plus.
VW is making 14 billion, put it in context.
Put it in context. And VW's market cap is, so Tesla's at 800 billion. I'm going to tell you to you, probably, let's look at it.
100 or 150.
No, let's look at it. I'll tell you right now. So with the markets got absolutely slaughtered last night. So I know VW's quarterly results came out. I'll tell you right now.
So I saw in the morning Tesla's trading shares now is like $830.7 per share.
Yes.
So I have, let's say 20,000 Rand, I want to buy those shares. What does that even mean? Do I have
It means
stock?
you have a percentage, you own a percentage of the
small
company.
percentage, not even a percentage.
20,000.
So market cap of Volkswagen is 100 billion.
Sure.
Tesla's 8 times more than 8 times more than that.
And if you look at the revenue, I mean, look at in production numbers, forget the numbers.
Yeah, 14 million.
14 million as opposed to, they're not, I mean, this year they're looking to get to 1 million Elon Musk vehicles. So that's 1/14.
So what? And profit, and you just look at the pure profit numbers.
Yeah.
VW
So look,
way more
so
profit,
it comes down to what is the future, and that's what people are doing. So they're prepared to pay to own Tesla because of Elon Musk and because of who he is and because of what he's done. And to be honest, his achievements have been phenomenal. But my problem with Tesla was, and I'm starting to kind of waver on that. I was adamant when I had a conversation a couple of months back that it's not a tech company, because I'm still struggling to understand how you're going to get on your ecosystem the users. So if you're selling cars, and you're selling 1.5 million cars, in my mind, let's assume all of those people are new Tesla buyers, which they aren't. Okay, because there is some guys buying new models.
Yeah,
So let's
yeah.
assume, so every year, and he's saying you're going to grow at 50%. So even if you grow that at 50%, you're only getting next year 1.5 million new users coming onto your platform. Last year you had 1 million. So that's 2.5 million. I mean, that's nothing compared to even Twitter. That's got 300 million daily active users. So I can't understand, like, okay, so how do you say it's a tech company? Because in order for it to be an ecosystem, you've got to have these users
That are paying you monthly.
that are paying you monthly. So I know you have this idea about the future is that we're going to not own cars.
Yeah.
And we will actually, like the four of us will have a car, and
It'll be autonomous.
It'll be a Tesla, and that makes sense because you can tap in and sell different services and all that kind of stuff. So, you know,
But I think that's years away.
I sit and I've listened to a lot of analysts talk about them, and because I watch Bloomberg and CNBC on a daily basis, and I've read a lot about it, but I'm still struggling with that. So for me, I wouldn't physically go and buy Tesla shares myself, but I do own some funds that like ARC Innovation Fund, which is Cathy Wood, which has been absolutely slaughtered. From $150, last night was sitting at $47, and her biggest holding is Tesla. She owns 12% of her fund is Tesla.
Wow.
Okay, but again, I'm buying into what a 5 to 7 year view on what she's pure innovation. It's all about innovation. So if she gets 50% of those companies right in a fund, if you look at the innovation over the last 20 years and you fast forward that, the fund should do well.
But aren't people buying into the person, Elon Musk?
Yes, they do.
So if he dies today,
well, I tell you another thing that's put a lot of pressure on his share price is this Twitter story. There's two issues with it. One, he's using his Tesla stock as the collateral.
Yeah.
So as the share price comes down, whoever's funded him takes shares, and they have to sell shares to fund it. The other problem is that where's his focus going to be?
Yeah.
So he's got Twitter now. I mean, before this he had SpaceX. He had he's got Tesla, and he's got Solar City.
Yeah.
And he's got that
AI
and he's got that the Bohr company, which is also worth $4 billion. The company was build the tunnels. So you had to take congestion and stuff away. And now he's got Twitter. So where's his focus going to be?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I would tend to back the guy because if you look at what he's done with PayPal beforehand and all these other companies, but the market doesn't like that.
Yeah.
Especially the Tesla shareholders. They're not liking that because they feel it's taking focus away from them. And also coupled with the fact that there's been a huge amount of volatility in the last 3 or 4 months because of we've had a massive spike in inflation, and all of a sudden now everybody's saying, well, inflation is here to stay. The Federal Reserve, the World Banks have been pumped $2 trillion into the world markets last year. Now they're going to withdraw all of that. We had a war with the Ukraine. We see what's happening now in Europe. They're saying we're going into recession. There's supply shortages, which is causing prices to go up. So there's now all of a sudden, and interest rates have gone up. That's the most important thing. When interest rates are sitting at 0% or 0.2%, all these tech companies that don't have earnings, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But when you talk about valuations and discounted cash flow, which in my mind actually means nothing, because really for me it's all driven by sentiment. Why can a company today be why was Tesla a week ago worth $1 trillion, and now with great numbers, and 3 weeks later, they've actually exceeded expectations, they're worth $800 billion. What's changed?
Yeah, those are the things that
that's markets are not driven by pricing, they're driven by fear and greed. So you fast track, you go a year back, everybody was well, we're missing out, greed, we need to get in. You go for a year forward, now everybody's fearful because now you're losing money on your investments, and that's why looking at it on a daily basis is a mug's game. It's going to make you just end up selling your portfolio and actually want to crawl into a hole. If you take the fluctuations on your portfolio,
yeah, you.
So don't look at it.
That's why you have.
In my opinion, I wanted to go down.
Yeah.
Because I'm investing for the next 30 years. So if you take 2019, 2020, and 2021, this S&P, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, I can look on a graph, but I'm going to tell you now, even after the sell-off of 15%, it's still up 70%.
Yeah. Higher than it's ever been.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter if it goes down 10% or 15%. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
If you're buying it in 2017, it's the same as when we had the global credit crisis. When I remember back then the Dow was 12,000, it's now 30, it dropped to 5,000. So if you've just been buying it and carry on buying it, I mean the Dow, even after this correction we had in the last week of 10% or whatever you want to call it, is now 32,000. So do you give a shit whether you bought it at 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 or 50 or 18,000. In 2020, in March 2020, the Dow went from 30,000 all the way down to 17 because I was watching it. 17,
I remember.
hit the bottom and then went back to 32. So even at 17, if you were buying it the 10 years before that, at 8 or 9 or 10 or 12, what do you care?
It goes back to the thing you were saying that you have to
look at it long term.
So to answer your question about Tesla, I don't know. I've got no idea because I don't know what's changed in the last 4. So if I was a long-term investor and I believed in the company, I'd use the opportunity to buy more.
Now that's dropping.
Yeah. Well, if you're happy to buy it when it's worth $1 trillion, why wouldn't you be happy to buy it at 800 billion in 3 weeks?
Nothing's changed.
Unless something major's changed, that oh no, there's some problem with the battery or the fundamentals of the business, and makes no sense to me. Good.
So my take on Tesla is if you have to separate the stock price and the sentiment about the value of the company with the technical achievements, and I think that gets muddled up, right? Because there's no doubt the technology in the car is far more advanced than any of the other existing factories. Not only the batteries, I think the battery is known to everyone that Tesla batteries are.
Well, I told you my theory on that, where we missed the trick.
Yeah.
I think I did tell you that.
Yeah.
What he should have done is he should have actually, if I was him, okay, because I mean Tesla was started in 2005 or 2006. He's been way ahead of the curve on everybody on EVs, and no one bought into it, and what he's done has been phenomenal, and he's definitely got the best battery, right?
Or it's definitely it's on the way to that.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say to you is, no, but I mean, what's out there in terms of you look at his, okay, so now go back and say to yourself, okay, look, if I fast forward and I get this right, I'm never, if the EV market of the auto industry is, I just told you it was about 100 million in new cars. Let's just say that ends up being 50 million. I don't know what it's going to be. So if you're going to have a market for electric vehicles, because I get it right, because other people you'll get other people start coming into it, okay? Which now you're seeing all these big companies, BMW, Mercedes, Ford, GM. You've got Rivian, you've got Nikola, all these companies coming into it. You're never going to. He might at the moment have 90% of that market share, okay? But when the market matures, even though he's got the best product, he might end up with 35, which is a huge market share in something like that. So assume that you're going to lose that 65 or 60 or whatever that is. So what I would have done if I was him is I would have actually sold my battery technology, my batteries to all the other vehicles.
So you'd have 100%.
Then I have 100% of the batteries.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you now, they're going to catch up. If you look at the hundreds of billions that VW and things, they will catch up. Where there's a will, there's a way, and they've got money, and they've got know-how, and they can do all of these things. Yeah. So what I would have done is I would have said, fine, I'll sell you the batteries.
Yeah.
I would have had 90% of the battery world. I would have controlled that market.
One big risk he does have now, Toyota have announced their first solid-state battery hybrid is going to be launched next year or something. That changes the game. Lithium-ion batteries.
And what about also the
hydrogen?
Yeah, hydrogen cells. I mean, I was watching the Nikola CEO last night. They had their earnings numbers. So Nikola as well. So Nikola is worth, when it listed, was worth 80 billion. They've only now, so the last quarter is the first quarter they've made a couple of million. They've now become a revenue company. They've made a couple of million in. I think. So let's go see what Nikola's market cap is. Tell you right now.
It's so interesting when we talk about Tesla, we don't mention their power pack, their power wall, their battery packs.
Yeah, but I mean that's all. But again, but they sell those power back. But so exactly, so that's where I see maybe that's why my thinking's changing about them maybe because the power wall. So now they're getting into households. So now if you think about it, in a household, now you've got a power wall, battery pack, whatever, and you've got a Tesla in your car. So now you've got a household. So now it's a family of 4 or 5. So that's maybe why the market is thinking you'll infiltrate from that basis.
But the problem is it's still not subscription.
No,
so all tech companies, we are paying them an amount every month. So the annuity income that they have is predictable. You can see it in the future. You know the subscriptions. That's why Microsoft...
Sorry, my numbers are wrong. But anyway, its market cap, Nikola, is 3 billion. But when it listed, let's just see when it listed.
And I think the key thing is that, for me, the separation between a technology company or tech company and a manufacturer is technology companies have got users that are paying subscriptions every month.
But when we look at Apple when it started before iTunes and Apple Music and all that,
they were hardware. They were hardware.
And
that's why they pivoted. That's exactly what we're doing in Jendamark, right?
That's why they shifted, right? To a subscription model. So what's Tesla's subscription model?
Yes, and that's what I kept asking, right?
Don't know what that is. Maybe he's got a card up his sleeve. We don't
Well,
know.
I'd ask him that.
But is that the future of businesses? Just subscription?
No,
'Cause everybody
no,
nowadays.
no.
I think you're talking about tech businesses.
Yeah. The valuation of a tech business. So the argument that we're making is that Tesla is being viewed as a tech business, but they don't have the business model of a tech business like Google.
That's
and
exactly.
Facebook and whatever.
We're saying they're a car company.
Yeah.
So coming back to this, so when they listed, they went up to $72. The last night they're trading at $7. So the market cap last night was 3 billion, 3.2. So at 72, let's just multiply it by 10. So when they listed, they were 30 billion. And they listed, when did they list? In beginning of 20, looks like 2020. All right. So I think they listed just after the
COVID.
in that 2020 year. Now again, so now we're in 2022. So last quarter was the first quarter they actually became a revenue company. So exactly what you're asking. So how do you come up with a 30 billion valuation, even a $3 billion valuation? So I think it comes down to the fact that you're buying an idea, whether it gets executed.
I think Elon Musk has got evidence of execution.
Yes,
he's executing.
absolutely.
But so the other key things in the car that I think is a big differentiator is, for example, the Giga Press, where they now have a complete underbody made in 3 pieces, whereas a typical car factory has hundreds of pieces to make that, reduces the production time. The latest information I saw was, for example, it takes 30 hours to build a VW ID4, the VW electric vehicle. So from the press plant all the way out, the car comes out the factory is 30 hours.
Which is a huge amount of time.
Yeah, the Tesla Model 3 is at 17. So just because they've changed the design of the car, they've made the manufacturing more efficient, which makes a lot of sense.
But it still doesn't answer the question.
How
is he going to scale that?
Yeah.
So how's he going to morph into subscription services and
exactly.
And
That's the question. So I think it gets muddled up. There's this great innovation and this ability to execute this manufacturing innovation and being muddled up as a tech company, but it's not. In my mind, I'm struggling to resolve.
And there have been some really big investors that have shorted it. So shorting means you take a bet against the company, and they've had their pipes cleaned properly.
Where's Warren Buffett? What is he?
Well, Warren Buffett would never buy Tesla because he's a value investor, and
value.
you might buy it if it was worth 50 billion.
Yeah.
So Warren Buffett's methodology is simple. When there's blood in the street, that's when you buy. Yeah. And he doesn't waver. He'll buy it if it meets his valuation criteria, and he can work it out in the back of a matchbox. Okay, and simple business, he can. So, like for example, he bought American Express and Visa because he sat in a coffee shop and he saw. When I'm talking in the 80s, this is now when credit cards were coming, and he could understand people using credit cards. He saw the value in that. Buys Coca-Cola because every day for lunch he has a McDonald's burger with a Big Mac with a Coke. He understands Coke, great, and he believes in America like 100%. So he bought 3 or 4% of Apple like 10 years ago, whenever it was. He now owns 5.5%. He's never sold a share because the share buybacks it's gone up. But I mean, it's his biggest value in his Berkshire Hathaway stable if you look at the valuation. But the guy buys and holds. And if it gets to a point where he feels it needs to sell it because it's now overrun those metrics, the company's worth much more than what he thinks it's worth, or the potential, then he'll sell it and he'll move it into something else.
Talking about tech, I look at Apple and people think Apple is blueprint. It will never fall. But companies like Blackberry and Nokia were once blueprint. How does that happen? It's a
good question, Goodwill. So I think so what happened with Blackberry and Nokia is they didn't want to adapt with the times. It's the same thing that happened to the camera, Kodak, sorry. They didn't believe in the digital camera. In actual fact, you were telling me that they developed the first.
Yeah, they made their R&D department came up with the first digital camera. It was presented to the board. They rejected it.
So you look back, but one thing Apple's been really good at is staying ahead, haven't stopped innovating, and they're not scared to stop. And Apple also doesn't buy other companies; they do it themselves. So I saw an interesting thing that IBM in the last quarter did something like 20 acquisitions in cloud and all these things. Apple won't. So if they want to do something, they do it themselves. Yeah. So they're doing the Apple Car. They're doing, so they're now already venturing into these type of things.
They're making it sounds like it's rumors, but they're making an operating system to run a car. not the physical car, but the operating system inside the car. So I think one important thing is know your customer, right? So let's use Facebook as an example. Who actually pays Facebook? It's not you as the user of Facebook or Instagram. It's the advertiser. So
why do they pay Facebook? Do you know why?
Because of the reach, the pool of people
They've got 2.9 billion daily active users.
Yeah.
2.9 billion.
It's a third of the world.
Now there's a good example. So Facebook's valuation was also 800 billion. It's now 250 or 400 billion. Well, it came down 40%. Because they had a bad quarter, making cash, making profits. They're saying, no, it's not a tech company. It's ex-growth. It's got 2.9 billion daily active users. Eyeballs. No, he's investing in the metaverse and reels, and he's not, and he's lost.
But I think it's not sustainable in the long term. Facebook, because people are not using it anymore. There's more.
Still got 2.9 billion. I mean, even if it goes down to 2 billion, Yanni. I mean, they're saying now there's TikTok and there's this and there's that. As an advertiser, if I want to get look at us. If you want to get your message out there and you want to get reach, and it's cheap. See, I don't buy into that metric. So what you want to do on a social media platform is you want people to go onto it. So you know what the Netflix CEO, when they asked him now I'm talking 10 years ago, before we had Apple streaming and we had Disney Plus and we had Roku and we had all these other companies that have come through that now went through the pandemic. They asked him, who's your biggest competition? You know what he said, Goodwill? Sleep.
AJ told us, yeah.
No.
Sleep.
But I think we pay Netflix for a service and they give us something. The problem with Facebook is that they get their revenue from adverts.
Yeah.
And we as the users are starting to use the service less. So the value of the adverts is going to keep going down. So the users are there.
Well, that's one of the reasons why in the first quarter that's why the share price got so pumped, because that daily active users and monthly active users was down. But in the last quarter, it was back up again.
And I think what's you can see Instagram, even Instagram's going down.
Netflix is also going down.
But Netflix, I'll give you
no, because of competition.
Not only that, they gained 16 million users over COVID. And now people are going back to work.
No, they've pulled a lot of that demand forward, and there's a lot of competition that's coming to them.
They lost 200,000 users. Then they gained 16
and
over
also,
the last 2 years.
The other thing on Netflix, Goodwill, so they've got 100 million users, I think it is.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, they've got 200 million. Is it 200 million? 250? Of the 250 million, 100 million are sharing passwords.
Yeah. We all share passwords.
So you must understand. So that's a big problem. So they've got to clamp down on that. So if you could just convert 30 of those 100 million
into paying customers,
you can increase your revenue base. But coming back to your social media platform, I mean, I think it goes in waves, Annie. You want people to use your platform and go and check your Facebook feed and all that, or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. What's the other one? Snapchat and Snap and everybody's on these feeds, but I think to get to that 2.9 billion.
But it's a decreasing number. So young people are not on Facebook.
But the thing is, on Instagram, the age is between 14 and 35. Those are the numbers.
And it's getting and again, Instagram's going to follow the same as Facebook. So the average user of Facebook is much older, our generation. Young people are not on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I think people are starting to realize that the algorithms that are keeping people on the platform are not serving their interest. No. It's serving the advertiser's interest. So the more people get conscious of that, the more they're like, well, I don't know if I want to use this anymore. And I think that's Elon Musk's play, is that he will, I don't know what he's going to do, but I'm assuming that he's going to take away the advertising model from Twitter. So then it becomes a case of you get real content that's not being pushed to you by an algorithm.
Still, if he does that, I don't understand how he'll generate revenue if he removes the advertisers.
What the
So they're talking about on Twitter, it's like they want to do like a subscription. People won't pay to do that.
I think they will, because people want honesty. Because the amount that's why New York Times is now generating more money, because people are paying. News 24 in South Africa, we now pay because we want the truth. Because we've been bombarded by this fake news so much. We don't want that anymore. And Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, but I think you're caught onto it, Johnny. I'm sorry. How many people in the world?
8 billion.
8 billion now.
The guy's got 3 billion people on his platform.
Who, Facebook?
Yeah. It's got 2.9 billion daily active users.
Yeah.
Guys, even if it loses 10% of them or 20% of them, there is no platform out there where you can get 2.9 billion eyeballs on your product.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, how long it takes, but I don't think it's sustainable for
I don't agree with you. I think you'll get these other snaps and whatever, and maybe they take 100 million here and 20 million here and 30 million here, even if it drops to 1.5 billion people.
But look
I
at
have the
WhatsApp.
ability as a company to go onto Facebook, advertise my product, and potentially get in front of 2.9 billion people.
Yeah, but I think that those algorithms are making people that want to advertise on Facebook not interested in it.
How many users does WhatsApp have? About the same.
Oh, no,
I
it's
wouldn't know.
2 billion. I think.
I don't
2
know.
billion.
I wouldn't
But
know.
then you can't advertise on WhatsApp. It's not.
They tried. You remember when they were trying to make a status update so that they can advertise?
So now his big thing is this metaverse story and all
That's
that.
his play, because I think Facebook, the current version of Facebook is not sustainable. So
Prints
he's not
money.
he's trying to
Prints
get
money. It doesn't have debt, makes 50 billion a
Yeah.
year. I promise you, it prints money.
No, of course.
Maybe it's not going to grow at 40% like it was growing, in thing.
Yeah,
It's
so
like saying with Apple, well, Apple's got, how much of the market share in the world have they got? It's saturated. Everybody's got a phone, right?
Yeah.
So,
but you paying Apple.
yeah, I understand that. But what I'm trying to say to you is, so how do they keep growing?
They keep giving you more services, but they now have an annuity income, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You Apple TV,
Yeah,
Apple Health,
yeah,
so
yeah,
you
but-
paying your
but
100
again,
rand a month,
and
right?
they've kept on reinventing themselves. So I wouldn't bet. I mean, I don't like Zuckerberg. It's not well liked.
Yeah.
Okay, but I wouldn't bet against him. I really like that business, that Meta business in terms of.
So Meta is interesting.
No, well, he's renamed Facebook Meta, but Facebook.
Yeah. So the Facebook app I'm 50-50 on. Even Instagram I'm 50-50. Even though they got the users, I can't debate that. His play in the metaverse is a different thing, creating the metaverse.
Well, again, I wouldn't begin to think. I don't understand these things. I'm clever enough to understand, as you know, this tech stuff and metaverse and going into the virtual reality and all of that. And
because I think that plays into the whole crypto and
maybe,
buying NFTs.
Maybe
whether that's real or not is another
Yeah,
discussion. I don't know about that.
So,
but there's clearly a millennial generation that wants to buy Bitcoin, that wants to buy NFTs, and sees value in digital assets, even though they're just in the cloud. Right?
I think the conversation that we had yesterday, Yanesh, when you mentioned that Twitter has created this idea, this illusion that certain views represent the whole world, right? It's like metaverse.
It's 300 million people, but everyone thinks that what's said on Twitter is true.
Yes. So even with Meta, I don't think, personally, I don't see it working. Maybe I'm not informed enough.
So Meta is not a social media platform.
Yes.
Metaverse, sorry.
Yes.
The metaverse is a place you go into and you buy.
You play your like our kids play these games, and
or you go and buy property.
So you have your avatar.
Yeah. And you
So
go.
you'll have your Goodwill avatar in there, and you'll buy a property here,
Yeah.
and
so
you're going to
he's-
spend time in the metaverse.
he's
You put
creating a
you
new
put your
world.
Oculus glasses on, and you
Exactly.
go in there. But how do you monetize that?
But
So
how?
you have these coins, like my kids, they buy these depending on if they're playing Fortnite or whatever. I mean, I don't even understand. I just see the charges on my credit card.
Yeah.
Can I have X amount of whatever
Crypto.
coin? Or crypto, maybe.
He plays crypto. So you can go into metaverse and buy. He creates his own crypto. What is it called? Forgot.
Dodge.
Yeah, but it's
No,
not,
no.
they shut it down.
Yeah, he shut it down. But he was trying to create his own crypto so that you can go into the metaverse and buy property or go to a concert, and you must pay for the concert in the metaverse. So he's creating a whole economy inside this virtual world. Great idea. If he pulls it off, he's going to make a lot of money out of it, because then you can convert the crypto to dollars or whatever.
But the thing is, are we consistently going to be in this metaverse? Is your avatar going to live autonomous of you and then do its own thing?
You will create the psychological part, at least the part I understand about the metaverse, is that Goodwill will not create goodwill in the metaverse. You will create the person you want to be.
Whoever you want to be. You want to be sick, you can be sick.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Exactly. You can drive a Lambo in the
metaverse. It can be
metaverse.
me.
But it's not going to be the same. The idea
The
psychologically,
idea
right?
is that it is the same.
Yeah, psychologically, you're living a parallel world. People are already sitting in their houses
because
behind
of
their
social-
laptops and living a parallel world, right?
People live the best life on social media. That's not the reality of their lives.
No. And the biological part of it is that you get the same endorphins in your head. If you have the glasses on, or you're living in this parallel world, and you see a hot chick at the bar, and you go there and the hot chick starts, you get the same endorphins, whether it's real or not.
And in the world, you wouldn't have the balls to go up to her and chat her up, or because
but in metaverse,
you're sick, so you can do whatever you want.
And that's his play, right? And that's his play. So that play, whether it's right or wrong, or morally right or wrong, is a different discussion. But from a business perspective, I think there's a huge thing.
I think I don't have any reasoning behind. I think it's not going to work. I think 10 years from now, all the odds are suggesting.
Goodwill, do you play
Fortnite
in that?
No.
Do you have kids?
No.
Trust me.
Yeah.
It'll work. You're talking about the younger. It's not going to work for you. You're now old. You're a millennial, but we're not talking millennials.
Yeah.
We're talking kids that have been born 2010 and older. Yeah. So my kids are in that metaverse already.
Yeah. You just think about the biological thing that happens in your head when you want to enjoy something. It's giving you the same thing. So why would you not just sit at your desk and get the same feeling?
But people like you, AJ, they are fighting this world. So
Yeah,
I think we will raise an awareness to put a stop into the advancement of technology the way that it's going right now.
I know whether you stop it or not, but from a business model perspective, the fact that you can go into this metaverse and buy fake property, and actually take your credit card out and buy a crypto and buy that property that doesn't even exist.
An NFT.
Yeah, I mean, people are buying pictures, like digital photos of. There's one video clip of, I think it's LeBron doing a dunk that got sold for $60 million.
They're now selling them at losses. A lot of them, they're coming back on the market and they're
Yeah.
selling them for less than what they paid for.
But
those people that are doing it are just. I mean, if you can spend 60 million on that.
Yeah.
I mean,
So he's going to take his cut of that, because the same guy will go into the metaverse and buy a piece of land for 60 million, right? Because people are willing to do it. The millennials and the younger generation that are now starting to work have got money. Remember, we live in Africa, and we obviously have a perspective from a third world perspective, but there's a lot of money circulating in the developed world. What are they doing with it? They're buying stuff online, and if it's fictitious digital stuff, they get the same endorphins out of it.
Sure.
Maybe not for us.
No, we're different, right?
We're different. I mean,
we want to hit a golf ball and swear at it in the real world.
Yeah.
Right?
Get away from our wives, not sit in the metaverse with our wives.
You can sit in the metaverse with the wife.
Yeah.
Another wife.
Another wife, another 5 wives. They don't moan in your ears. They don't give you whatever you want. Eh?
I don't know if we have that software yet.
No.
It's not ready.
When we had a conversation about electric vehicles versus combustion engines, you mentioned that we're not looking at the impact that EVs actually have in the environment. Can we talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so I told you, again, what we're not being taught, well, you can't get, people are not thinking for themselves. So why would you buy an electric vehicle?
For me, it's just the hype. There's a hype around it, especially a Tesla. I was in one with Yanesh.
Okay, all right, that's fine. So you like the vehicle and everything else, but the dream is you buy an EV because it's cleaner energy, right? Makes the world a better place. Well, does it? Where do your minerals come from? Or the rare stuff that you need on that battery? So cobalt, which I think is critical in every battery needs. You know where that? I told you that story. You know where that comes from?
Yeah.
From the Congo. You know how they get cobalt out the ground?
Child labor. Yeah.
Child labor.
And what I learned the other day, just on that, is that all of the big OEMs are buying it through brokers.
Yeah, so they have like this, we're
not
validating it's not child labor.
Yeah, it's not us. The broker's key.
Yeah. So it's like you have a middleman, you put him in there and it's on him.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, right, so we all buy these electric vehicles and we all go plug them in. What does that mean? Where is electricity coming from? Good one?
Coal. Right now, coal.
So I don't know that guy that works for us in your department, one of the Landray. So Landray did a study.
Yeah.
So I asked him to go and actually pull the stats out for me, and he was actually shocked. So I think the number was like 80% of the world's electricity still comes from
fossil fuels.
From fossil fuels.
Yeah.
So now again, coming back to what we were talking earlier about the share price, and so what everybody's buying into is, well, we believe in the next 20 years it'll come from wind and it'll come from from solar. So if that's the case, then don't buy the EV now. Wait until then, because you're gonna put more pressure on the grid, right?
Yeah.
Buy the internal combustion engine because it's cleaner. It's got a cat in it. It's got all. We build those cats.
Yeah.
So how much does a cat clean the particulate filter? How much does it clean it?
Yeah, I don't know the percentages, but the emissions compared to 10, 20 years ago is...
What you should be doing is asking yourself if and again, it's all about, no, it's greener, it's better, it's all this stuff. It's bullshit, man. What you should do is, if you care about the environment, don't get an aeroplane. One flight, long haul flight.
Yeah.
Okay, when are they going to build electric aeroplanes? And boats and ships and generators, because that's where what's causing the trouble. So
70% of the emissions
So
come
if
from
you're going to
those
buy an
things,
electric vehicle, you love the car and the tech and everything, perfect, I get that. But don't come and tell me, oh, you must do it because it's greener. Oh no, it's going to be greener in 20 years. Then buy it in 20 years. Don't buy it now. So until I see. So if your Tesla came, I mean, he was telling me, we went to Amsterdam and everybody's got their Tesla and running their cables into their...
Because they live in apartment buildings, right?
into their buildings and everything else, and all that happens when electricity goes. There's more electricity that they need to draw from wherever. So I think in Holland they do use. There is quite a bit of wind and everything else. And if you go, for example, to Denmark and these Nordic states, they are really got clean energy. Like the one, and this is the whole story about mining Bitcoin and that, because I saw a thing about Bitcoin, and there was this Bitcoin miner in. I think it was in Sweden or whatever, and the place that they were getting electricity was from hydropower, and it's completely clean. Okay, so but the point I'm trying to make is, in 20 years' time, when only 20% of our electricity is generated by fossil fuels, then it makes complete sense. And then don't turn your blind eye and whatever, and basically preach that your shit doesn't stink because children are dying. Just because it broke, it doesn't mean
it's not happening.
It's not happening.
So like 70% of the cobalt comes from the Congo. Like so.
So then what?
Every car is infected by it, right?
So I always sit and when people tell me something, I hear what you're saying to me, but think about it. So I get you wanting to buy a car because it's new tech and it's new looks and it's completely different. I get all of that. Okay, but don't tell me I'm doing it because it's better for the environment. It's not better for the environment. Well, not now. And I mean,
no, not in Africa for a long time.
In 20 years' time or 25 years' time, I'm 70. I'm coming to the end of my life. Okay, so how does it help me? So you've gone and pumped all these. Everybody's talking about trying to get carbon neutral by 2030. In order for us to do all of that stuff, we all, as a global community, have to stop cutting down on
our consumption,
on our fossil fuels. Cut down on the plastic and the shit that people just throw in the streets and in the oceans and all that stuff. And we've got to work as a collective on that. If every single person, like what they did in Rwanda, like the government came in there, it was a very dirty, so he made a rule. On a Saturday or Sunday, everybody cleans. Can eat off the streets there.
Yeah.
Can eat off the streets. Told you when I went to India last year, it looked to me as if it was much cleaner.
Yeah, big drive.
Big drive there as well. Just pick up the rubbish and everything else. So my take on EVs are, I think the tech is good and there's some really interesting things coming out of it, but don't tell me you must buy it because it's greener, because that's a bullshit reason. Maybe in 20 years' time, no, it's going to be cleaner in 20 years, and then buy it then. Or if you're in a place where you know your electricity comes, or if I, with my Tesla, get a little solar thing on the roof and it charges it. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Or I've got solar at my house, like I have. I've got solar. So for me, if I'm plugging it into my solar bank at home with my batteries, then it is cleaner, right?
Yeah.
If I'm charging it there, or like we've got solar here. So if I come to work and I charge it and I use the solar here, well then I am making a difference, except for the cobalt. So
but that's for an elite few, because financially not accessible to the majority of people. So.
Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate the insights. I'm sitting up at my seat. It shows that I'm still eager to hear more. Before we close off, I just want to ask you about your legacy. What do you want your legacy to be for your kids and for the people that are watching? What would you want it to be at 70 when EVs have taken over?
I told you this the other day. I wonder how many people will come to my funeral. That for me, and I'm not talking physically, but also just, if you have an online thing, because that's how they do. That's really a mark of, for me, the legacy is making a difference in people's lives. Whether you can change one person's life for the better, okay, just one. That's for me what the legacy is about. I do have a question for you, Goodwill, because we spoke about, my question for you was, why do you get defined based on the fact of how much money you have or perceived to have? We haven't discussed that. So because I have a Lamborghini, why does that mean that I've got money? Why does that put me on a pedestal?
I think for me, well, for starters, you're the only one in my 24 years of living that I've seen who has one to start with, right? So society, it's socialism. Society has convinced us that that car is valuable, and automatically the guy that can afford that will be...
But how do you know I wasn't part of the Guptas and stole it from one of them?
Yeah, that I can't know. It's perceived that you worked hard to get it, and the thinking is, what did you do to do that most
So
people...
I don't want to have my legacy to be the guy with the Lamborghini. Do you understand? And I quite frankly couldn't give a shit what people think of me, Goodwill. Honestly. Alright? I know in my life that if I can make a change in one person's life and make their life better, whether it mean me helping them with being able to get a promotion or come to Jendamark and be better and get a good job somewhere else, or helping someone that's from an underprivileged background to get an education or to make a difference in someone's life, that for me is what your legacy should be about. And I always think about other people in terms of, okay, if I was in that person's shoes, how would I be feeling? And what can I do to make it better? Like if you can learn one thing from me, like, okay, here's a guy, he's giving me some advice. Clearly, I haven't seen his bank accounts, I haven't seen it, but I assume he's been quite successful in terms of what he's done. So maybe I should follow some of his advice on those things. But the legacy is defined by what people think about you when you're not there anymore. And whether that be one person or a million people, I don't know. Could be. I think that's what it should come down to. I mean, I don't feel that you want to build a business. I don't need to have a business that's worth $1 trillion. Why does that put me onto a pedestal? You see what I'm trying to say to you?
Yeah.
You know, so look around you. I mean, I've listened to a lot of your podcasts in terms of your kind of background and where you've come from and so forth. So say to yourself, well, how do I help the next Goodwill to be better? To have a better life. You understand what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I'd like my legacy to be. Whether I achieve that or not, I feel I walk around, people are generally scared of me. And again, I told you, it doesn't bother me, rightly or wrongly. The reason they're scared of me is because generally they've got something to hide. Especially people that don't want to look me in the eye or whatever. But the people like yourself that's happy to come sit in my office and whatever, that's, you know, so yes, we sit here at Jendamark and we're building it, but we don't just do it for money. Yes, money is an aspect of it, but I don't think we're driven by money.
No, not at all.
I think we do things here because we want to make a difference in people's lives. If that leads us to be a $1 billion company or $10 billion, but I don't need $1 billion, I don't need $10 billion.
Well, if your goal was to make a difference in one person's lives, I can say you've made a difference in mine. So.
Well, that's good, Jan. And
That's
you've
one.
made a difference in my life as well.
I hope so.
No, absolutely a huge difference. I've learned a lot from you. So I'm glad I've made a difference in your life and done that. But yeah, so I think if we as humanity just think about the other people a bit more, you know, and put yourself into the other person's shoes and try and walk a couple of steps in their life, I think we would have a different kind of aspect or viewpoint of what people do. I don't say that you have to now go out and, you know, put on a pedestal, okay, I'm doing this charity and I'm doing this, and they look at me. It's not about, people don't need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because the people whose lives you've changed are different, they know you. That's the way I feel about it.
Thanks, Vic. That was good.
I see what you consistently say, and she has a big heart.
Who?
Sick.
The biggest heart. Told you before.